Hey, Prolific community. Welcome back to the Prolific Hub podcast, a digital archive of all things life and the pursuit of creative entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Aaliyah Cheyenne. This podcast celebrates all of the change makers, way makers, and world builders who are charting their own paths and inspiring others to do the same. We highlight creatives, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and also discuss everyday life topics. If you've already rated and written a review for the podcast, thank you. If you haven't had a chance to just yet, it's never too late. Reviews help tremendously in the podcasting world, so I appreciate you taking the time to leave one. The best way to discover new podcasts is by word of mouth, so keep sharing the Prolific Hub podcast with your tribe. Be sure to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you'd like to show even more support, text the show, send in a voice note, or consider a monthly subscription. See the show notes below for more details. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hey friend, welcome back to the show. Welcome to episode 50. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have made it to 50 episodes. Might not be 1,000, might not be in the 300s or the 400s, might not even be in the hundreds yet, but 50 is also a big deal. Very small percentage of podcasters make it to episode 50, so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to celebrate with you. Before we jump into the episode and the celebration, if you haven't had a chance to just yet, please be sure to leave a 5-star rating for the show. Write a positive review if you are a longtime listener or a new listener and you're enjoying the show. Let me know in a review. You can send a text to the show. There's always a link in the show notes for you to text the show. I'll have an opportunity to see your message and I can respond to you on the show. You can also send a voice note. So if you happen to be listening, there's something you want to respond to on the show, there's a link in the show notes as well for you to send a voice note in, and I'll be able to play that and respond to you in a future episode. So if you haven't had a chance yet to do any of those things, and you're a fan or a supporter of the show, you are a part of this community, and you would like to share your thoughts, your feedback, your input, your encouragement, your support, your ideas, your thoughts, anything, please be sure to connect with me through those methods and let me know. We are celebrating 50 episodes today. So for longtime listeners of the show, or maybe for folks who are new to the show, but you've been binging the catalog from the very beginning, you know that this podcast has seen an evolution. It started one way in the very beginning for the first 20 or so episodes, and it has since evolved. When it first started, it was myself and co-host, my sister, my best friend. Over time, it has evolved to just me and all of our incredible guests who I'm so grateful to have had on the show to date, and so many more coming in the future. I'm so excited for that. And yeah, what I really wanted to see happen with this show has happened. I am creating evergreen content that is important and impactful for creatives, for new budding entrepreneurs, for folks who are interested in learning more about creativity and entrepreneurship, for folks who are interested in self-improvement and spirituality. Like, we're talking about all of those things, and I absolutely love it. So it's been a fun ride. I'm excited to keep it going. I will say that I am thinking about slowing down and taking a little bit of a break during the winter. So more to come on that. But until then, I still have some great episodes planned for you. So continue to tune in. And yeah, I've seen a lot of shows just evolve over the time. Some of my favorite shows have ended, or maybe they've been on hiatus for a little while, or maybe they're, on a temporary break and they'll be back soon. Or maybe the structure of the show has changed or is changing. And I think that's a natural part of the creative process, especially for people who are not just running a podcast as a hobby, but who are also operating it as a business, a source of income. Things change, structures change. So it's very interesting to watch the landscape evolve. I'm also in a number of like online communities for podcasting, and let me tell you, people are continuing to start podcasts every day. Like, it's not slowing down anytime soon. Like, everyone is who is starting podcasts, like, they're doing it for different reasons. They're doing it at different points in their lives when they feel called to do it. Everyone won't have the same quote unquote success rate. Everyone's success rate will be different. It will look different. What success means to everyone looks different, but it's not slowing down. People are still starting shows. People who have been doing shows for a long time are always thinking about ways to improve their shows. So it's very interesting to see the landscape. I'll talk about this a little bit more in another episode, but recently I attended Podcast Movement in DC, which is a big conference for podcasters, not just hobbyists or like indie podcasters, but also like professional podcasters who are earning a living primarily through their podcast, but also people who work in the industry. There are a number of people, especially people who have been in the podcasting space for a very long time, who have transitioned to podcasting, maybe from radio or from other forms of media entertainment. So it's very interesting to see like all of those worlds collide in a conference space. And it was a really good experience. It was really informative. I learned a lot. I met some cool people. And I'll talk about that experience a little bit more in the future. But I say all that to say that I showed up. I did it scared. I did it alone. I did it anyway. If you remember that episode, I'll be sure to link to that one in the show notes. If you haven't listened to that one yet, go back and listen to that one after this. But it was important for me to show up, to do it scared, to do it alone, to do it anyway. And I had a good experience and I learned a lot. And so many things that I would love to implement for this show to make it better, but no, taking it step by step, doing what I can for now in my own capacity to make it the best that it can be, not just so I can be proud of it, but so you as a listener who is investing your time and your energy and your ears into spending this time with me so that you can feel proud of the show too, that you can continue to be a fan, to be supportive of it, to share it with your community as well. So more to come on that. So I say all that to say that it's no small feat making it to 50 episodes. For anyone who has a podcast or who has tried to launch a podcast or who has even tangentially like worked on one in any capacity, you know that it is a lot of work. All of my fellow podcasters know it is a lot of work. It's so worth it to me. I love when episodes that I've worked on to curate, to produce, to edit, to promote, I love when they go live. I love to hear it back because I've also been in a season of bulk recording as much as possible and scheduling episodes out for a good while. So sometimes like it might be a few weeks or a month or two since I recorded the episode, since I edited it and scheduled it. So many times when I'm listening to it back or playing it back, I'm being reminded of conversations I've even had with guests or things that I've spoken about in solo episodes. So it's still such an incredible and fulfilling project for me. And I'm excited to have made it to this 50 episode mark. And I'm so excited that you're here with me. So, of course, in the future, as fan mail and as reviews come in, I'll be so excited to read those and to share those and to give folks shout outs during the episode. But I thought it would be fun to share a little bit about where folks are actually listening to the show from, because I always love to see like the stats and just check out where folks are actually like listening from, what platforms they're listening on, what devices they're listening on, any of those sort of metrics that I can see. It's very interesting to me, but I always love to see like the location. So I wanted to share a little bit of like the locations that folks are listening from, all time locations. So in terms of countries, we've had most of our listeners, obviously, are in the United States, which is great. But we've also had listeners in Spain, the Russian Federation, Portugal, in Brazil, in India, and a couple of other countries. So I think that's really cool and like really fascinating just to see how far the podcast is reaching, where folks are tuning in from. I can't always see exactly like how they're coming across the show. Like, I don't know if maybe they're seeing something on social media and then coming to check out the show, or maybe sometimes different media players recommend shows on the homepage as like something a user might like to listen to. So, perhaps some folks are coming from that type of recommendation. I don't really know for sure, but it's really cool to see these different locations. It's really fun to see the cities. So in NYC, listeners in the Bronx, hey BX, Brooklyn, that's really cool. I've had listeners in Orlando, Florida, Sebastian, Florida, hey. So Madrid, I've had listeners in Maryland. I've had listeners in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, so that's really cool. Jacksonville, Florida. We talked about Russia, so Moscow. And Lisbon in Portugal, it's really cool. Hyattsville, Maryland, Santa Cruz, cool. San Diego, California, Philadelphia. Like, it's really fun to see like all of these locations that folks are listening from. I've had downloads, back to countries again, I've had downloads in Saudi Arabia, like what? Downloads in Canada, Bermuda, South Africa, the UK. Like, that's really cool. I've had some downloads in Japan, the Philippines, the Netherlands, Ireland, Germany. I've had some downloads in Kenya, in Indonesia, Austria, Denmark, France, Ukraine, Ecuador, Bolivia, Bangladesh, Vietnam. That's really cool. Australia, Argentina, Mexico, Costa Rica, Turkey, Hong Kong, Lithuania. Like, it's really cool to see all of these places that folks may be downloading episodes in and listening to. Back to cities. So New York as well, like Manhattan, in addition to the BX and Brooklyn. I've had downloads in Washington, Virginia, Queens, New York, Baltimore in Maryland, Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Woodbridge, Virginia, Ashburn, Virginia, Raleigh, North Carolina, Greenbelt, Maryland, Lillington, North Carolina. We talked about Canada, so Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Where else? High Point, North Carolina, Stamford, Connecticut, Los Angeles, California, Richmond, Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia. That's been fun. Seattle, Washington, Silver Spring, Maryland, Hyattsville, Maryland, Chicago, Illinois, Boston, Massachusetts, Macon, Georgia, District Heights, Maryland, Dover in Delaware, Reno, Nevada. We talked about Canada, so Montreal in Quebec, Rochester, New York, Albany, New York, Boardman, Oregon, Berlin, Portsmouth, Virginia, Newark, New Jersey, Hendersonville, Tennessee, Fairfax, Virginia, Riverdale, Georgia, Clifton, New Jersey, Monroe, Georgia. We talked about Ireland, so Dublin, Leinster. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but That's been a place. Sacramento, California, Poway, California, Hyde Park, Massachusetts, Katy, Texas, okay, Newport News, Virginia, Allentown, Pennsylvania, Danbury, Connecticut, Sedalia, Missouri, okay, Catonsville, Maryland, Kilgore, Texas, Fort Pierce, Florida, Thornhill, Ontario in Canada, Sumter, South Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, Brampton, Ontario, back in Canada, Layton, Utah, Falls Church, Virginia, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Portland, Oregon, Ansonia, Connecticut, Oxford, Oxfordshire. I guess, that just sounds very UK. Uh, Springfield, Virginia, Cary, Illinois, Nashville, Tennessee, Kingstree, South Carolina, Beacon, New York, Poughkeepsie, New York, Blaine, Washington, Levittown, New York. Interesting. Levittown has an interesting history, but hey. Basin, Wyoming. Wow. I mentioned Japan, downloads in Tokyo, Berkeley, California, Vienna. Oh, that sounds like Italy. Little Rock, Arkansas. Birmingham, Alabama, Paris, Winchester, California. And I mentioned Moscow and Spain with Madrid. So many different locations that folks have downloaded and listened to the podcast from, which is really cool to be able to look and see all of these locations. It's really fun to see where folks are listening from. And I would love that list to keep growing in all of those places and beyond. So if you heard your city or your country get a shout out in this episode, and you have folks in your network who you think would enjoy this content, would enjoy this podcast, please be sure to share it with them. We want the show to continue to grow and to reach the right people, to reach its right community. So if you're listening, you're a part of this community. And if you'd like to see this community grow, please be sure to share this episode, share the podcast, share your favorite episode of the podcast with someone in your network if you haven't already. And let's keep growing. Let's keep showing up in more cities and in more countries. Let's continue to spread just the education and the connection with the show. All right. So in terms of the future, what does the future hold for the podcast after episode 50? So I've been considering a lot of things. When the show first started in its original format, it was a bi-weekly show. We were dropping episodes every other week. And there is a part of me that has been thinking about dropping back to that cadence again, just so it's a little less pressure and work on me to ensure that an episode is going out every single week, but also to give me a little bit more space in terms of scheduling interviews with guests and that outreach and what that entails, and making sure that I'm getting episodes recorded and released in a timely manner. So I've been thinking about that. I'm not completely sure yet if that's exactly what I like to do, but it is something that I have thought about. Other formats I've thought about are just, shorter episodes. Like interviews tend to be a little bit longer. Most of my solo episodes tend to be under an hour, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes less. So I've thought about that. There are some podcasts that drop like daily 5 to 15-minute episodes. I don't think that's me, but I've thought about maybe doing shorter episodes each week. And yeah, there's a possibility for that. I'm not completely sure yet, but that is something that I've been toying with and thinking about. I also kind of enjoy the format that I have now, like doing 1 week solo episodes, the next week guest interview, because it allows me some space when it comes to scheduling and interviewing with guests, but it also gives me an opportunity to talk about the things that I want to talk about, like on my own, without necessarily having a guest there with me to have that conversation, just like a solo episode, just coming and talking to you just as me. And I've thought about whether or not I want to keep that format or maybe do switch it up a little bit, like maybe do back-to-back guest interviews and then a solo episode, or back-to-back solo episodes and then a guest interview. Like, I'm pretty sure that I'll keep some combination of solo and interviews going forward, because it does allow for more flexibility. And I think that's something that makes the show a little bit special. Like, there's one-on-one time with me, and then there are our incredible guests who come in and offer insight, expertise, share their brilliance, share their trajectory as creatives and entrepreneurs. And I think it's a really nice balance. So I do plan to keep that mix going forward, but we'll just see if I might tweak it or adjust it a little bit. If you have a preference, if you like the way it's been, or you like a different cadence, let me know. You can text the show, send a voice note, leave a review. I would love to hear from you, because this show is just as much for you listening as it is for me creating it. So let me know what you'd like to hear. I would love your feedback. I think one thing I touched on just very briefly this episode, but I've also talked about it in a past episode as well, is just bulk recording. I do like to bulk record, several episodes at a time. Like, if it's a day where I'm doing a guest interview, I might also plan to knock out a few solo episodes if possible. If I can't do a few, maybe one or two, and just having that available so that I can edit and schedule it and release it when I'm ready. And there are some advantages to that. That means that I can, for the most part, do a bunch of work on the front end and just kind of coast for like weeks or a month at a time, because I have episodes like scheduled out for a while. I think the only, drawback to that is that sometimes I might do a guest interview and then that episode might not go out for a while, which I always let guests know in advance. It might not go out for a while, but sometimes things may come up in conversation that by the time the episode is released, it's a little bit outdated, based, from the time that we had recorded it to the time that is released. So that's something I've been thinking about as well. Like, the advantage to that is that, again, I can front load a lot of that work and just kind of coast. And it helps me to kind of say, like, hey, this is who we're going to hear from next when I do like solo episodes. So it's just, it's something I'm thinking about, like how much I want to continue to do that. It gives me space and time to like get some work done in between, but I'm also like, oh, it would be nice to like do an interview and release it a little bit sooner. So I've been doing some thinking around that, and what that's going to look like going forward. So we shall see. That's not always something that like you as someone listening would know necessarily. Unless of course I share it like I'm sharing now, but just in the spirit of transparency and like how I'm doing the show, that is something that I've done at least this current season, and something I'm thinking about continuing. And we'll see how that goes and how that works out. In terms of the evolution of the show, something that we used to do like in the very beginning was have specific segments. And there's a part of me that kind of wants to reintroduce segments, maybe not so much for interviews, but maybe for solo episodes. I think it would be nice to continue to share mental health tips, or talk about something current that might be on my mind that I might want to share, but I don't want that to be the totality of the conversation or the episode. I just want it to be an aspect of it. So I've been thinking about what it might look like to reintroduce segments and what I want those segments to be, what I want them to cover. So stay tuned. That potentially might be a thing that gets reintroduced into the show, just to keep things fresh and engaging for you listening and for me as the host. So that's something that I've also been toying with and considering. Something that's kind of been coming up on my mind lately is, sometimes when folks have like an existing podcast and they want to shift gears a little bit, they either have the opportunity to create an entirely new podcast with an entirely new RSS feed and everything, or they can just rebrand, rename the show, keep everything else existing. And in terms of me, I did the latter from the show, from its original name and sort of format. I switched things over. I didn't necessarily start a brand new show separately. So a lot of the, well, not a lot, all of the previous episodes, the previous iteration of the show are still available to listen to. And sometimes I wonder if pivoting was the best decision versus just starting over from scratch. Just because when you first set up a show, selecting your categories, which you can change at any time, but I still see some places on the internet where I'm still seeing like previous iterations of the show or like previous categorizations of the show, despite the fact that I've updated these things. And sometimes I wonder if that has helped or hurt the show at all. But I'm continuing to press forward and give the best show that I possibly can, given this pivot, given the evolution, given where we are now. So that's something that I plan to continue doing, and I hope you will continue to be on this ride with me. Like I said in the beginning, 50 episodes is still a big milestone. It might not be 1,000, might not be 500 or 400 or 300 or 100, but 50 is still a big deal. I'm excited for that number. I'm proud of myself for hitting this milestone and this benchmark, especially this particular season of the show, like really proving to myself that I can do it. I can do it and I can do it well. So I'm proud of that. And I'm excited to be here at episode 50. I'm excited that you're here with me. I think it's so cool to be in this together. So thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating with me. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you reviewing. I appreciate you sharing the show. I appreciate your time, your attention. I appreciate being your companion with whatever you're doing right now, whether you're driving, cleaning, cooking, walking, whatever it is. I appreciate you lending me your ears. I really value this space that we've created together, and I hope that we continue to be in this space together and continue to show up for each other every week. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for celebrating 50 episodes with me, and I'm excited for the next 50. Let's keep this thing going, okay? We've got this. Let's do this. If you love this show, that means you are following the show on your favorite podcast platform so that you're always notified first when a new episode drops. That means that if you haven't listened in a couple episodes and you've just come back, that you are continuing to check back each week for new episodes when they drop, especially if you have an iPhone or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, because there was an update earlier this year with Apple Podcasts that if you step away from a podcast and you don't listen for a couple of weeks, Apple Podcast, despite the fact that you might be following the show, they may stop auto downloading episodes, so you may not even realize that new episodes are dropping. So make sure you're checking back for the show every week. If you don't see it in your up next, your queue for the week, make sure you're checking back. If you love the show, please continue to follow the show. Make sure you're following the show on your favorite podcast platform so that you always know when new episodes drop each week. Please be sure to head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Even if you're not a YouTube person per se, the subscription helps me tremendously. So just to show support, please head on over and hit the subscribe button, support the channel, support the show, get the visual for the episodes. Like if, you want to switch over from just listening to maybe watching the visual for the episodes and we see each other face to face, eye to eye, YouTube is the place for that. So please head on over to the channel and subscribe to the channel and show your support there. And follow the show on TikTok and Instagram. I regularly share clips of the episodes, some of my favorite parts, some of your favorite parts. Be sure to follow the Prolific Hub Pod on Instagram and TikTok so that you get those and you see them. You're able to share. Sharing is free. So if you head on over to those social media platforms, you'll be able to share clips of the show, share it with your networks, share it with your online community so more people can find and discover the show. And I appreciate you in advance for that support. Of course, the primary way that you can support the show is by rating the show. Please give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform. Write a review for the show. Let me know what you think. If it's your favorite podcast or one of your favorite podcasts, please be sure to let me know in the reviews. If you have thoughts about any particular episodes, any of your favorites so far, let me know in the review. If you just want to say congratulations for making it to 50 episodes, let me know in a review. I would love to see that and I would love to share it as well. So please take some time to write a review for the show, short and sweet or longer if you prefer. And I will be so excited to see that. And I would love to share your review on the show in the future. So please be sure to leave an incredible review for the show. I would really, really appreciate it. Reviews definitely help to get the show out in front of more audiences, in front of more people. So please be sure to share your thoughts and let's help more people find this show. I will also say positive reviews would be so uplifting because as teeny tiny as the YouTube account is for this show, of course it has attracted trolls. I've already had to either clap back at or delete just unnecessary trolly comments on YouTube. Everything from comments around what I look like, what I'm talking about, sometimes comments that have nothing to do with the episode at all, just whatever. And yeah, it would help to see something more kind, something more positive than that foolishness. So if there's no other reason why you choose to leave a review, let it be for that. Something uplifting, something positive, something affirming. I would love that. So please take some time to leave a review for the show. I would really, really appreciate it.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
One thing I know for a fact that I will not be doing is niching down. There are a lot of conversations around finding your niche, sticking to your niche, drilling down to your niche, picking one niche, sticking to that topic. I'm not doing that. We contain multitudes. There are a number of things that interest me in this season of my life. So this show will continue to reflect that. I love creativity and I love honoring creatives and creative people. I love uplifting path charters and world builders, people with unique lenses and visions who are creating the world that they want to see through their creative endeavors, through their businesses, through their unique gifts. I love uplifting that sort of stuff. I love celebrating solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. It's not an easy path. Nothing in the professional landscape is always an easy path, depending on the field that you're in. There's always some sort of grind. There's always effort. There's always proving yourself. There's always building something. There's always opportunities for growth. And I'm so inspired by people who choose the solopreneur path or the entrepreneurial path and the insights and the experience and the expertise that they've gained over the years, especially in this season of my life where I'm new at it and I'm trying to build something for myself. I love spirituality. I can't get enough of it. I was listening to the Small Doses podcast recently, and I believe it's an episode called Side Effects of Whitewashing Spirituality, if I'm getting that correct. Amanda Seales is the host of that podcast, and she had on a guest. But before we even got into the conversation with the guest, Amanda was doing like a solo introduction and talking about what spirituality means to her. And I loved the way that she defined it. Amanda on the show and in other episodes defined spirituality as the practice of bringing you closer to a higher power. And she also goes on to define spirituality as the practice of connectivity to that power source. And to everyone, that power source is different. There are countless religions and spiritual practices that exist in this world. Most of them consist of and include a higher power. Oftentimes, that higher power goes by a different name depending on the spiritual practice or the religion. And I'm so deeply in tune with spirituality, I often refer to God as my higher source, my higher power. But what God looks like to me might be different from someone who practices a different spiritual practice or a different religion. That is just the name that I have selected and that I'm more comfortable with in describing that higher power. But to me, God is also very present in nature. I look to and try to be informed by a lot of indigenous practices that remind us of our connection to nature, the importance of nature, the importance of listening to the whisper of the wind, the importance of basking in the sunlight and letting it recharge us and fuel us and give us the vitamins and the nutrients that we need, the importance of grounding in the earth, planting our feet in the grass and in the soil, and being reminded that we are all one and we are all connected. The ecstasy I feel in my spirit when I'm floating in water or when I'm near a body of water is just unmatched. So to me, oftentimes I also find God in nature, in trees, in soil, in wind, in water, in fire. Like, those things are very important to me. And I love exploring spirituality and what it means to different people and how it shows up in different people's lives. So that will also always be an element of the show that won't change. Will also say, you all know I will always find an opportunity to reference astrology, but because I love astrology. And to me, that is also a tool or a language, as Tracy L. Rogers, a previous guest on the show, refers to it. To me, that is also a language and a tool informed by God. I don't see a difference. So, like a lot of tools and languages informed by God. But I will dial that back to say that in astrology, I have a 12th house stellium. So a stellium is when you have 3 or more placements in the same sign or in the same house. So in my case, I have a 12th house stellium because I have it's either 5 or 6 planets all in the 12th house in my birth chart. I say all that to say that the 12th house is largely associated with the unconscious and spirituality. And I am finding more and more that even without considering my chart, that is an area that I lean into a lot. I've spoken about it on the show when it comes to a number of things, sort of going into the unknown and going into the void to learn more about ourselves, how we relate to one another, about our society, how we show up as human beings. So that will always be at the front of my mind and always something I want to talk about. I personally love self-improvement. I'm constantly striving to grow. I love folks who have a growth mindset as well, because I can learn from them. They can learn from me. That's an area that we connect on. I am on a constant journey of trying to evolve and just grow as a person. So I love talking about self-improvement. I love implementing self-improvement things in my life. I love learning from other people who are always working to grow and evolve and improve themselves in whatever capacity. That could be physical improvements, that could be mental improvements, emotional improvements, financial improvements, like whatever the category. I just love folks who have a growth mindset, and I'm deeply attracted to that in other people. And it's something I desire and strive for myself. So that will also be an aspect of this podcast that is not going away. In the intro for the show, I talk about how this show celebrates all things life, self-improvement, and creative entrepreneurship. And I feel as though as long as we are on this side of the dirt, there's always more life to be had. And for our loved ones who have transitioned, there will always be lives to celebrate and to honor. So all of the things that come up in life. Life is expansive. We suffer, we grow, we love, we break, we build. We do so many things in life. So I will always talk about those things too. We talked about that a little bit in a previous episode. I believe it was called Embracing Seasons of Change. We talked about that in our death episode, Journeying Through the Primordial Soup with Adriana Michelle, who goes by the Death Alchemist on Instagram. So I will always talk about various life topics. That's not going to change. So niching down will not be a thing for me. I will be covering all of those areas. Those will continue to be a through line throughout every conversation, throughout every season, throughout every episode. I can never get enough of that stuff. So as long as you're down for the ride, we'll continue rocking on out together and enjoying these conversations and learning and growing and pouring into our creativity and celebrating life and navigating life and all of the things that come with that. Building, growing, and evolving as people and as a community. Thank you for celebrating 50 episodes with me. Wow. Next week on the podcast, we will be speaking with Ebony Janice Moore. Ebony Janice is a womanist hip hop scholar, and I am so excited for you to hear this conversation, and I'm so excited to share that interview with all of you. So I will catch you back here next week. Thank you for celebrating 50 episodes with me, and I look forward to continuing to grow the show and make it better for you, for me, and for anyone who engages with the Prolific Hub podcast. All right, friend, I will catch you in the next episode. Have a great rest of your week, and thank you for spending this time with me. Bye. Hey, friend, if you made it this far, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. The Prolific Hub podcast is hosted and produced by me, Aaliyah Cheyenne. If this episode resonated with you, please leave a 5-star rating and positive written review. Reviews help tremendously in the podcasting world, so I appreciate you taking the time to leave one. Be sure to share this episode with a friend and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the Prolific Hub pod on your favorite social media platforms to stay connected. Consider supporting the show with a monthly subscription or send us your thoughts on this episode via text or voice note. Find all of the juicy details in the show notes below. Catch you on the next episode.